The glass didn't fall by accident. It was nudged, knocked just enough to spill, not shatter, but land perfectly in Selina Moore's lap. Ice water soaked into the front of her cream linen blouse. She blinked once, just once. "Oops," said the flight attendant, not even attempting eye contact. "Didn't see your tablet there." The man across the aisle chuckled behind his hand. "This isn't coach, sweetheart," he added, his voice smooth with cruelty. "Maybe try row 32. Selina didn't move. She reached down, slowly wiped the tablet screen with the corner of her scarf, and looked up. Dead center into the eyes of Rebecca Vaughn, the lead flight attendant. "You'll need to return to your assigned seat," Rebecca said crisply. "First class is reserved for—" Selina finished the sentence for her, voice soft and razor sharp. "People who look the part?" Rebecca hesitated, smiled, tight-lipped. "People with verified bookings." "I have one." "Well then," Rebecca said, louder now for the cabin to hear, "we'll need to see your boarding pass. Again. Before we go further, tell us where you're watching from. Because if you've ever been told you don't belong, this story was written for you. And in 10 minutes, this plane will learn who Selina Moore really is." Selina unfolded her boarding pass calmly. No rush, no apology. She handed it over. Rebecca barely glanced at it before scanning it again on her handheld device. The screen turned green. Valid. Her smile didn't. "These scanners glitch all the time," Rebecca said, forcing a casual laugh. "You can never trust technology, right?" She looked back at the man in 1A, the one who knocked over the water, and gave him a knowing look. He grinned. "Guess she finessed her way up here," he muttered, not bothering to lower his voice. "Should have worn a real watch, lady." Selina's eyes dropped briefly to his wrist. Cartier, maybe fake. Then back to Rebecca. "That'll be all," she said. But it wasn't. Not yet. Behind Selina, 2 more passengers were watching. A young Indian-American woman in a gray pantsuit, and a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair holding a leather briefcase. Both said nothing, but their eyes said everything. They'd seen this before too. Rebecca stepped closer, lowering her voice, but not her tone. "We do have standards for this cabin. Most of our premium clients fly in with status or private accounts." Selina raised an eyebrow. "And?" "Well," Rebecca said with a breathy sigh, "you don't seem like the usual type. No offense." "All offense taken," Selina replied smoothly. That stopped Rebecca cold, just for a moment. Then she tried to regain control. "Security will need to verify this," she said, stepping back toward the cabin phone. "You can wait in business class while we resolve the mix-up." As she turned, her hip caught the edge of Selina's tray, knocking the tablet to the floor with a solid thud. "Ma'am," Rebecca said without looking back, "please don't place your electronics on surfaces meant for service items." That was the second time something had been accidentally knocked over. And still, Selina said nothing. But now, her eyes were locked, focused, tracking. Across the aisle, the man in 1A chuckled again. "I'm just saying, I know what money looks like," he smirked. "And that scarf ain't it." He leaned toward the woman next to him and whispered. She probably clicked the wrong seat on one of those discount apps. The woman tried to smile, uncomfortable. Selina bent down, picked up her tablet, and wiped it dry again. Then, without speaking, she tapped the lower corner of the screen. A quiet hum of biometric recognition. Skyline route, level 0. Authenticator. Ready. Still, she didn't press enter. Not yet. 3 rows back, the Indian-American woman, her name was Priya, but no one here bothered to ask, whispered to the man beside her. I think I know who she is." He looked at her. "Who?" "I saw her name on a keynote list last month. Dubai Aviation Summit. Something about global runway rights." "You sure?" Priya nodded slowly. "Her name's Dr. Selina Moore." "Wait, The final key, Selena Moore? I think so. The man sat back, watching. Suddenly, things felt heavier. Rebecca returned with a second flight attendant and a quiet murmur into the intercom. "Security is on standby," she announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "We're addressing a verification issue in first." Selena didn't even look up. She simply placed her hand over the tablet and whispered under her breath, "Execute Sky Ethic Degradation Protocol, Tier 2. The screen flickered once, then glowed green. Authentication complete. 3 major hubs. Access suspended landing rights. 1.1b. Frozen. And with that, everything beneath this plane, all the airports, all the routes, all the access, began shifting. Inside the plane, silence. No one knew yet. But the sky had just started closing its doors. Rebecca leaned over again. "I'm giving you one last chance," she said, her tone now biting. "Stand up, or I will have you escorted out." Selena looked up. "I suggest you sit down." "What?" Rebecca blinked. Selena's voice didn't rise, but it cut through like frost. "I said sit down, before this plane loses more than its reputation." That's when the cockpit phone rang. Rebecca answered. Her eyes widened. Then her face drained. She turned toward the aisle, murmured something unintelligible, and stepped away. The second attendant followed, clearly rattled. Across the aisle, the man in 1A adjusted his jacket, then leaned forward. "Wait," he said to Priya. "You're telling me that's her?" Priya nodded again. "She owns the system that tells this plane where it's allowed to land." Selena sat back in her seat, tablet on her lap, eyes closed. She wasn't just sitting in first class. She was sitting at the top of a system that now had the power to shut the sky around them. And in 10 minutes, everyone on this flight, from the arrogant in 1A to the stunned in row 3, would know exactly why that mattered. The silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like tension hiding in a silk suit. Rebecca Vaughn stood near the cabin phone, fingers shaking just slightly as she pressed it into the cradle. Her lips were tight. Her gaze was darting. Not panicked, not yet, but definitely searching for something she could control. Selena Moore was no longer looking at her. She had already moved on. The sky was moving now. Airports were adjusting. And no one in this plane knew just how deeply their world had started to shift. Well, almost no one. "Hey," whispered the man in 1A to Priya. "You're sure that's her?" Priya swallowed, voice low. "Selena Moore. They call her the final key." "The final what?" "She designed the clearance system for 48 international airports," Priya whispered. "Skyline route. It's like the digital spine of where and how planes land." "You mean like just now, when Rebecca got that call?" Priya nodded. Across the aisle, Selena slowly folded her scarf and placed it neatly beside her tablet. Back near the cockpit, Rebecca was now deep in whispered conversation with another flight attendant. The tone was lower, more urgent, and suddenly, the casual air of superiority that had clung to her like perfume was beginning to wear off. But still, the script hadn't changed. She returned to Selena's row, a tight smile back on her face like stage makeup hiding bruises. "Ms. Moore," she said, the name still foreign in her mouth. "We're terribly sorry for the confusion. We had a manifest update issue earlier, that's all." Selena didn't blink. Rebecca continued, forcing a laugh. "Honestly, technology these days, right? You'd think they'd figure out how to keep systems straight by now." Selena tilted her head slightly. "I thought you didn't trust technology." Rebecca froze, just for a second. The man in 1A caught that moment. He smirked. "She burned you on that one." Rebecca straightened, attempting composure. "Of course, if there's anything we can do to make you more comfortable." "Sit down," Selena said. "Excuse me? Your shift is over, you just don't know it yet." At that moment, the cabin lights flickered. Just once, and then dimmed to cruising mode. But the mood in first class didn't settle. People weren't drinking, They weren't relaxing. They were watching. Selina wasn't the one who looked out of place anymore. Meanwhile, in Doha, Frankfurt, and Abu Dhabi, ground control teams scrambled. Automated notifications from Skyline Route had red-flagged Orion Skyfleet as ethics non-compliant, pending clearance suspension. The protocol had gone live only 5 minutes ago, but already 3 major hubs had withdrawn landing access temporarily. One of them, Abu Dhabi International, was the destination of this very flight. The system didn't ask permission. It didn't issue warnings. It followed the final authenticator's orders. And today, that authenticator was seated quietly in 1D. Inside the plane, the shift wasn't obvious. Not yet. But the crew was rattled, and passengers felt it in their bones. The woman in 2B, an elegant older woman in a silk blouse, turned to Selina with a small nod. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She was old enough to know when a storm had arrived in silence. Selina returned the nod, just once. In the galley, Rebecca slammed a paper cup into the trash. "She's doing this on purpose," she muttered. "Trying to make a scene. Viral drama." The younger attendant beside her, Madeline, barely 30, shifted uncomfortably. "I don't think this is about going viral." "Oh, please," Rebecca hissed. "She came in here acting like she owned the place." "She does." Rebecca turned. Madeline's voice was quiet but clear. "She owns the system. She's not some influencer pretending to fly first. She's the reason we land." Rebecca scoffed. "That's not how the world works." Madeline held her gaze. "Maybe not for you." Back in first class, Priya had pulled out her phone, not to record, but to check a site. She typed, "Selina Moore, Skyline Route." The first result, Dr. Selina Moore named route authenticator for 48 Nation Aviation Alliance. She turned the screen to 1A. "Believe me now?" He stared. "That tablet of hers, it's not a device. It's a key." "Not a key," Priya whispered. "The key." The cockpit door cracked open. A man in pilot stripes stepped into the aisle. Not the captain. The first officer. He walked slowly toward Selina's row, clearing his throat gently. "Dr. Moore?" She turned her head, expression neutral. He stopped just short of her armrest. We've just received a communication from Abu Dhabi ATC," he said carefully. "There seems to be an issue with our landing slot, a suspension temporarily." Selina nodded. "That sounds accurate." The man swallowed. "Ma'am, I wasn't aware." "You weren't supposed to be," Selina replied, her voice even. The man looked back toward the cockpit, then back to her. "We'll do whatever is necessary to restore clearance," he said. "Just tell us what that is." Selina didn't answer right away. Then she looked around the cabin, at Rebecca, at the man in 1A, at Priya, at the silence that was no longer ignorance but discomfort. Finally, she said, "Truth. That's what restores clearance." Rebecca's voice cut through from behind. "You can't hold this plane hostage because of some attitude." The first officer turned to her. "Ma'am, please return to the galley. I'm the lead on this flight." "Not anymore," he said quietly. Rebecca blinked. For the first time, real fear cracked through her face. She didn't speak again. Selina reached into her tablet sleeve and pulled out a thin black folder. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. Just holding it shifted the atmosphere. "This contains flight compliance reports," she said, standing now, "including 6 filed in the past quarter against Orion Skyfleet for unethical conduct in first-class cabins. All buried, all flagged." A low murmur spread across the rows. "This flight was supposed to be a field test," she continued, "to see if the airline was ready for expansion into Tier 1 hubs." Rebecca tried to interject. You planned this?" Selina turned. "No, you did." The cabin was frozen. No one moved. No one breathed too loud. Then, from the back of first class, a young man, maybe 20, headphones around his neck, raised his voice just slightly. "Yo, this is the most powerful woman on the plane, huh?" Selena looked at him. He smiled awkwardly. "Just saying. Next time, maybe y'all check who's sitting where before trying to throw folks out." Someone chuckled. Then someone clapped. Just once. It wasn't performative. It was respect. Selena didn't smile. She didn't need to. She sat down again, crossed her legs, and placed the black folder neatly on the tray. The seatbelt sign dinged overhead. Cruise altitude reached. But the ground below was no longer theirs. Not unless they earned it. And they would earn it. Through her. The air in the cabin didn't just feel tense now. It felt aware. Passengers weren't just watching anymore. They were listening. Even the ones who had looked away earlier pretended to sleep or scrolled through their phones like nothing was happening. The temperature hadn't changed, but everything else had. Rebecca Vaughn, once the self-assured queen of the cabin, now stood stiff near the galley, arms folded like a barrier against her own unraveling. Her perfectly applied lipstick now looked like armor cracking under heat. Across from her, Selena Moore sat poised, legs crossed, folder closed, tablet resting flat on her lap like a gavel waiting to drop. And the judgment? It hadn't even started yet. "You're making a mistake," Rebecca said, not shouting now, but clinging to that last thread of superiority. Selena tilted her head slightly. "You've said that twice now." Rebecca's lips pressed tight. "You can't just walk onto a plane and punish people because you don't like the service." Selena didn't blink. "I didn't walk onto a plane," she said. "I walked into my own test." A few gasps echoed softly. Priya turned to 1A and murmured, "She planned this. Not to punish, to observe." Selena leaned back in her seat. "And you," she said quietly, "failed." The young flight attendant, Madeline, stepped forward, nervously adjusting the cuffs of her sleeves. "I just want to say," she began, voice shaking but clear. "I tried to flag what was happening. On the tablet, I recognized the Skyline route authenticator symbol." Selena met her eyes. "I know," she replied gently. "That's why you still have a future in this industry." Madeline looked down, visibly relieved. Rebecca scoffed, arms crossed tighter. "Oh, please," she muttered. "This whole act, what is it? Some dramatic crusade? You don't belong here and you know it." That's when Selena stood, slowly, deliberately, and just standing, she changed the posture of the entire space. "I don't belong here?" she said, her voice low but carrying like steel. "You think belonging is about who you're comfortable serving?" Rebecca stepped back. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," Selena interrupted, sharp and clean. "You meant it when you ignored me. You meant it when you knocked over my tablet, when you humiliated me in front of this cabin, and you certainly meant it when you called security, knowing full well you never scanned the other passengers' boarding passes the way you did mine." The man in 1A sank into his seat. The woman beside him looked away. "This cabin isn't about money," Selena continued. "It's about expectation. You expected someone like me to be invisible, to apologize, to move." She paused. "I don't move." Somewhere near row 4, someone exhaled audibly, like they'd been holding their breath for 10 minutes. The first officer emerged again, speaking softly into a handset, then made his way down the aisle. "Dr. Moore," he said carefully, "we've just received confirmation from Abu Dhabi. Landing rights are currently suspended, and we're being rerouted to Istanbul for fuel holding. They said your protocol flagged ethics non-compliance for the carrier." A ripple moved through the cabin like a slow wave. Rebecca's eyes widened. Wait, you're the reason we can't land? That's a federal violation." "No," Selena said calmly. "That's what happens when a system corrects itself." The officer looked uncomfortable. "Do you wish to provide updated clearance, Dr. Moore?" Selena glanced at Rebecca, then at the passengers watching like a silent jury. "No," she said. Not until this crew acknowledges what's been done. From the back of First, a voice spoke up. It was the young man from before, headphones now around his neck. "I saw her get shamed right here, man," he said, looking at Rebecca. "You didn't ask anyone else for proof. You didn't throw anyone else shade. Just her." He turned to Selena. "You're right not to let this slide." Rebecca looked around the cabin, and for the first time, no one looked back to support her. No polite smiles, no sympathetic nods. Just silence. Uncomfortable, unforgiving. The older woman in 2B, who'd been silent the whole time, finally spoke. "I'm old enough to know when someone's being targeted," she said, voice low but steady. "I've flown this route for 25 years. Never once have I seen a first-class passenger treated like that over a scarf and a pair of flats." Then she looked at Selena and nodded again. "And I've never seen anyone sit so still through it." The first officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am?" he asked Selena gently. She turned back to him. "I will restore clearance when the cabin crew, specifically Ms. Vaughn, issues a formal acknowledgement of misconduct and bias." Rebecca's jaw dropped. "You're kidding." Selena raised her brow. "Do I look like I'm joking?" A pause. Then, slowly, Madeline stepped forward and turned to Rebecca. "She's right." Rebecca turned sharply. "Excuse me?" "You didn't just enforce policy," Madeline said, growing braver. "You enforced assumption. You called security on a black woman sitting in the correct seat because you didn't like how she looked in it." The man in 1A looked away again. Priya nodded in silent agreement. Rebecca's eyes welled, not with guilt, but with panic. She turned to the first officer. "This isn't fair." "Neither was what you did," he replied. And then, something no one expected happened. Rebecca's voice cracked. "I just thought she didn't belong here." Her words trailed off. No one said anything, because the damage was done. Selena turned to the first officer. "Clearance restored," she said simply. The officer spoke into the handset. "Protocol override confirmed. Abu Dhabi approach slot restored." A soft chime rang through the plane. Altitude adjusted. Route corrected. But the cabin? Still frozen. Selena sat again. This time, not in defense. In decision. The folder still rested on her tray. Her tablet glowed faintly. She tapped once. Sky Ethic Flight Report filed. Orion Skyfleet. Case number 302B flagged. Internal audit pending. Recommended. Staff retraining. Cultural bias protocol. The woman in 2B whispered across the aisle. "Ma'am, thank you." Selena looked up. "Don't thank me," she said softly. "Hold the next one accountable." As the plane cut through clouds, leaving Zurich behind and heading into Gulf airspace, passengers sat straighter. Not because they were told to, but because they just witnessed what real power looked like. Not loud, not flashy, but immovable. Like a runway that could vanish beneath your wheels, unless you earned the right to land. The descent began with the quiet ding of the cabin chime, but there was nothing quiet about the mood in first class. No one had touched their meals. No one had asked for a drink in 20 minutes. Even the man in 1A, who once couldn't keep his voice below a smug chuckle, now sat rigid, arms folded, lips tight, eyes forward. The arrogance had left the cabin. What remained was gravity, the kind that didn't come from altitude. As the plane drifted lower into Gulf airspace, the first officer returned with another update. His voice was steadier now, but the tension in his shoulders said everything. "Dr. Moore," he began, "we've been granted landing clearance back at Abu Dhabi, effective immediately. Tower instructions confirm reroute is lifted. Skyline route override accepted." Selena didn't look up from her tablet. She just nodded once. "Good," she said. "Let them know we'll be arriving with a statement." The officer raised an eyebrow. "A statement?" Selena met his gaze, firm. "This flight isn't just landing. It's arriving with accountability." He swallowed and nodded again. "Understood." In the galley, Rebecca Vaughn sat on a metal jump seat, hands clasped tightly between her knees. Her face was blank now, not from calm, but from collapse. She hadn't said a word since Madeline spoke against her. She hadn't been able to. Every time she opened her mouth, someone else in the cabin would glance her way with a look that said, "We heard it, we saw it, it's over." And it was. As the plane began its final descent, the lights dimmed slightly, signaling passengers to stow their belongings. But no one moved. They were waiting for something. A moment. A verdict. A truth. And Selena Moore was ready to give it. She stood just before touchdown. Not dramatically, not to grandstand, just to speak, plainly, clearly, while the sky still cradled the truth she had carried the entire flight. "Some of you might think this ends with a landing," she began, her voice even but undeniable. "But it doesn't. Not for me, and not for this airline." A few passengers shifted, eyes locked on her. "This wasn't about a seat," she continued. "It was never about a boarding pass or a booking number. It was about how easily you assumed I didn't belong here." She paused, letting it hang, letting it hit. "You thought I was mistaken, or lying, or pretending, all because I wore linen instead of labels, all because I chose silence over spectacle." She looked toward Rebecca, who couldn't meet her eyes. "You didn't ask anyone else for proof of purchase. You didn't knock anyone else's tablet off the tray. You didn't pour water in anyone else's lap." Gasps echoed again, not because the passengers were shocked it happened, but because they hadn't realized how much they'd normalized it. "I've been flying this route for 15 years, Selena said, "and not once has the turbulence come from the sky. It's always been from the people who think they own it." Her voice remained steady. "This airline failed today, not because of the weather, but because it never learned how to land with dignity." The plane touched down a few moments later, the soft thud of wheels on tarmac signaling more than arrival. It was a shift in ownership, in perception, in power. They were no longer flying above consequence. They were landing in it. When the doors opened, ground agents didn't just greet passengers. They boarded. 3 uniformed personnel stepped into first class, flanked by 2 internal operations officers from Orion Skyfleet. The first officer approached them, handing over a printed statement. Then he motioned toward Selena. The lead officer nodded. "We're here at her direction." Gasps stirred again. Someone whispered, "She really does own the system." No one doubted it now. A tall man in a Navy Orion blazer, executive tier, stepped forward, nervous smile already in place. "Dr. Moore," he began, "on behalf of the company, I'd like to apologize." Selena raised a hand. "Stop." He froze mid-sentence. "You're not here to apologize," she said. "You're here to receive the incident report and to acknowledge in front of every witness what happened on this plane." He hesitated. She turned to the crowd. "Because if no one says it out loud, it just becomes a ghost. Something we pretend didn't happen. Something we let happen again." The executive cleared his throat. He looked down, then up. "In accordance with protocol, Orion Skyfleet acknowledges a breach in ethics and passenger treatment standards aboard Flight 803. The airline accepts full responsibility and will comply with any and all corrective actions mandated by Skyline Route and Clearport Gateway." A stunned hush, then a quiet murmur of agreement. Selena nodded once. "Thank you." She turned to Rebecca. "I suggest you step forward too." Rebecca didn't move. Madeline stepped beside her. "It's time," she said gently. Rebecca's voice, when it came, was barely audible. "I misjudged a passenger based on appearance. I let bias inform my behavior, and I failed in my duty as a representative of this airline." Selena tilted her head. "Is that it?" A pause. Then, Rebecca's eyes watered. "And I'm sorry." Selena didn't smile. She just said, "That's how you land, with humility, not just protocol." As passengers began to gather their belongings, no one rushed, no one pushed. They filed out slowly. like they were walking through something sacred, or perhaps something broken that had just begun to heal. At the jet bridge, a small crowd had gathered: journalists, internal auditors, and ethics officers from the International Aviation Oversight Bureau. But Selina didn't stop for cameras. She didn't speak into microphones. She paused only once, to address a teenage girl standing near the window, her mother's hand wrapped tight in hers. The girl whispered, "You're the woman from the flight." Selina knelt slightly to meet her eye. "Do you fly much?" she asked. The girl nodded. "Sometimes." Selina smiled. "Then remember this: never let them tell you where you do or don't belong. Let your dignity speak louder than their doubt." The girl beamed. "I want to be a pilot one day." Selina stood up. "Then one day," she said, "you'll be the one setting the rules for the sky." As she walked down the terminal, calm, steady, the whispers turned to applause. Not loud, not performative, but meaningful. The kind of sound that meant, we saw it, we learned, we're changed. Outside, 3 private black sedans waited on the tarmac. Not for show, for transition. Selina was no longer just a passenger. She was the reason future passengers would never be treated that way again. And as she stepped into the car, her assistant Carla's voice came through her earpiece. "Full report submitted. Orion's Tier 1 certification is now under review. 3 other airlines have requested copies of the Flight Justice Charter." Selina exhaled once, calm. "Good," she said. "Tell them next time. We won't wait until landing." Selina Moore didn't go home after the flight. She didn't rest. She didn't even change her clothes. She walked straight into the control room at Clearport Gateway, the most secure aviation coordination center in the Gulf region. The moment she stepped through those doors, the atmosphere shifted. Technicians sat up straighter. Analysts turned off side conversations. Even the clock on the wall seemed to tick louder, like time itself understood the gravity of what was about to unfold. "Status?" she asked, walking toward the ethics compliance dashboard. Her chief ops officer, Idris, stood by a console with 3 monitors stacked vertically. Each showed a live heat map of aviation ethics scores across 48 international airports, green, yellow, and red pulses dancing across the screen like a heartbeat. "We've downgraded Orion Skyfleet's ethics tier to orange," he said. "But if you approve the protocol, we can initiate immediate degradation to red across 3 partner airports." Selina nodded slowly, reading the data. "Which 3? Munich, Singapore, and Vancouver. All 3 operate under the Skyline Route Agreement. We control clearance permissions through the ethics gateway." Selina folded her arms. "Then, activate it." Idris hesitated. "Just to confirm, this will suspend all Orion aircraft landings at those airports, effective within the hour." "Good," she said. "Let them feel turbulence where it matters." He tapped a biometric key and entered the code, S-Ethics-01-RF. Across the monitors, red pulses flashed over 3 cities. A message blinked on the internal terminal. "Landing clearance revoked. Non-compliant ethics tier triggered." Within 27 minutes, Orion's legal team sent the first email. Within 32 minutes, a partner airline, Astra Wings, requested an emergency meeting, fearful of collateral damage. They had shared 3 recent code-share flights with Orion. Within 41 minutes, the Wall Street Journal published a breaking news alert. "Ethics breach grounds Orion flights. Black CEO behind 1.1B. Freeze identified as aviation protocol architect." And just like that, the silence broke. Inside her office, Selina watched as headlines spun across 4 continents. CNN International, powerful backlash in the skies. Dr. Selina Moore shuts down 3 airports over discrimination scandal. BBC News, grounded by ethics, airline industry faces reckoning after VIP incident. Al Jazeera, Clearport Gateway flexes global power in response to racial bias. Fox Business, ethics or overreach? 1.1B in landing rights, frozen by single executive. Selina wasn't surprised by the framing, but she was prepared. Her phone buzzed. A message from her in-house counsel. FAA Compliance Board wants a briefing in 6 hours. International Civil Aviation Org wants in. Should we prep talking points? She replied instantly, no talking points, just truth. They'll feel it more. At 1:17 p.m., the Board of Governors at Orion Skyfleet held an emergency Zoom session. All 9 members joined, minus 1. That missing seat? It was now vacant, because Rebecca Vaughn, the senior in-flight trainer, had officially resigned. Or rather, she had been tactfully removed and offered a soft landing in the form of a silent exit and revoked benefits package. But that wasn't enough. Not for Selina. She wasn't looking for apologies. She was building precedent. In her next executive memo, which went out to every major airline operating under the Skyline route framework, she issued the following directive. Effective immediately, any act of passenger discrimination, harassment, or profiling that triggers a red flag event will be met with the following consequences. Immediate ethics downgrading cross-border suspension of landing rights. Public disclosure of violation on the Global Fair Skies Registry. No appeal process will be entertained unless accompanied by verified reform metrics and internal disciplinary action. That document would later be known as the Moore Memorandum, and within 24 hours, 19 airlines had requested copies. Within 48 hours, 6 airports offered to pilot Selina's Flight Justice Index, a scoring system she had been quietly building for months. And just like that, the system she had once designed to monitor ethics became a system to enforce it. Back at the Clearport lobby, her assistant Carla brought her a fresh change of clothes. Crisp navy suit, white silk blouse, low heels. Selina took 5 minutes to clean up, recenter herself, then walked into the media briefing room. Over 40 journalists sat packed in, but she didn't offer a monologue, just one short, piercing sentence. The sky is not neutral if the ground rules are rigged. Silence, then shudders, pens, breathless notes. During Q&A, a reporter from the New York Times asked, Dr. Moore, some critics say this was a personal overreaction, a single crew member, a moment of misjudgment. Why escalate it globally? Selina didn't flinch. If a surgeon leaves a scalpel in a patient, is it a moment of misjudgment? She asked. Or malpractice? The reporter blinked. Selina continued. What happened to me wasn't isolated. It was permitted. It was routine. That's what makes it dangerous. She paused, then added, and I didn't escalate it globally. I just stopped letting it stay invisible. As she left the room, a group of interns and young staff members clapped quietly. One of them whispered, She changed the way we fly. Selina didn't smile. She simply said, We're not done yet. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, her team ran a final report. Result: 1.1b in landing rights, frozen 3 airports suspended cooperation. 4 more airlines under ethics review. FAA requested formal integration of Flight Justice Index for 2026 policy cycle. Selina stood on the rooftop of Clearport, overlooking the glowing runway lights below. Aircraft continued to land, some hers, some competitors, but the air felt different. Not because the wind had changed, but because now it had rules written by someone who knew what injustice smelled like at 30,000 feet. And for the first time in decades, Selina Moore didn't just run infrastructure, she ran accountability. The glass conference room at Clearport Gateway had never been this full. Not during merger season, not during crisis drills, not even when Elysium Airspace Holdings launched their revolutionary autonomous routing system in 2022. But today, every seat was taken, because Selina Moore wasn't just hosting a meeting, she was rewriting how the skies worked. A screen behind her displayed the title in large clear letters, Flight Justice Charter. Ethical Compliance Standards for Global Passenger Aviation. Beside her stood legal advisors, AI ethics experts, and former FAA compliance officers. now quietly employed by Selina. Across the table were compliance officers from 14 airlines, 6 international regulators, and 2 advisors from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. No snacks, no coffee, just truth, protocol, and pressure. Selina didn't speak for the first 5 minutes. She let the silence cook them. Some squirmed. Others flipped through the document. One executive from Solara Wings whispered to his colleague, "She can't actually make this binding, can she?" Selina finally looked up. "I heard that," she said calmly. "And yes, I can." The room went still. She stepped forward and tapped the screen. "Passenger dignity is not optional. It is a condition of operation." She explained the framework. Every airline operating through a Skyline route-affiliated airport must sign the charter. Every flight crew must complete verified anti-discrimination training quarterly. Every incident of bias, profiling, or harassment will be logged into the Flight Justice Index, an open access score updated in real time. Any airline falling below the compliance threshold for more than 14 consecutive days will automatically trigger a multi-airport clearance suspension. There are no appeals without verified passenger restitution and policy amendment. A hand went up. Michael Dorian, VP of Air Cross. "This seems ambitious, but what jurisdiction does your team have to enforce this industry-wide?" Selina gave a small, knowing smile. "I'm glad you asked." She nodded to her assistant, who tapped a remote. A second screen lit up, a web of airport nodes, all pulsing in Elysium blue. She pointed to them one by one. "We don't need jurisdiction, we have infrastructure." She walked over to the screen and continued. "Elysium owns the clearance data systems at 48 major airports. Our Skyline route platform controls runway access protocols across 4 continents. And as of last week, we've signed cooperative licensing with the FAA's Digital Clearance Review Board." Then she dropped the final hammer. "Any airline that refuses to adopt the Flight Justice Charter will be flagged as ethically non-compliant and barred from operating routes through our partner ports. You don't have to say yes, but you do have to find a new sky." Someone coughed. Another reached for their water glass. Only the FAA rep, Olivia Tran, seemed unaffected. She raised a brow and said, "And what if the public calls this a private takeover?" Selina replied without blinking, "Let them. Power doesn't always scream. It drafts standards." After an hour of Q&A, heated but controlled, Selina ended with a signature phrase. "The skies belong to everyone, but not everyone deserves to run them." And then she walked out. That afternoon, a PDF copy of the Flight Justice Charter was published on the Elysium site. Within 4 hours, it had been downloaded 19,000 times. By midnight, 5 airlines had signed. By the next morning, 2 airports in Europe voluntarily adopted the compliance framework, calling it a non-negotiable future. Social media erupted. Hashtag Flight Justice Charter trended globally for 36 hours. Civil rights groups, frequent flyers, and even former flight attendants began sharing their stories online. One viral post read, "I used to work for Skynova. I once got reprimanded for letting a black teen sit in first class, even though she had a full fare ticket. This charter? It should have existed 10 years ago." Meanwhile, inside the FAA headquarters in D.C., a quiet storm brewed. Deputy Commissioner Harold Kessler frowned at the draft memo on his desk. It wasn't just that Selina Moore had outpaced the government. It was that she had left them no moral escape route. "Either we back her," he muttered, "or we get run over." By lunchtime, he had sent a classified brief to the Secretary of Transportation. The subject line was simple: "Adopt or be left behind. The charter is coming." Selina, back at her Houston office, reviewed the live feed of airline scores ticking across the dashboard. One airline dropped from 76 to 62. Another rose from 54 to 78. Every blip told a story. Every drop was a reckoning. She picked up her phone and made one call. to a longtime partner at a law firm that quietly handled 3 of the nation's top union contracts. "Prepare an ethics clause addendum for crew contracts," she said. "If they want our money, they sign our culture." That night, Selena sat alone in her office, watching the skyline. Not the runway, not the monitors, just the skyline. The dark stillness, the quiet before another storm. She thought of the girls who'd been kicked off planes for their hair, the men who'd been eyed suspiciously for praying quietly, the mothers who were treated as burdens for flying with their toddlers. She thought of her own mother, stopped once at age 64, mistaken for a cleaning woman in a first-class lounge she had paid for. And then Selena whispered to the window, her own reflection staring back at her. "We don't rise just to sit quietly." In 72 hours, the Flight Justice Charter would reach 31 signatories. The FAA would formally recognize it as a benchmark, and global aviation would never fly the same again. It started with a headline: "Power grab in the skies. Black CEO sets dangerous precedent." The Liberty Herald. By noon, 3 more outlets followed suit. Private charter, public chaos. Who gave her the right? Capital Compass. Is this the end of equal skies or the beginning of segregated policy? American Ledger. Moore's mandate, the most radical move in aviation since deregulation. Airline Journal Weekly. It was coordinated, and it wasn't subtle. Behind the scenes, a group of airline CEOs, most of whom had never signed a diversity pledge unless forced, had launched a quiet media campaign. Their goal was simple: discredit Selena Moore, make it about ego, make it about overreach, make it about her race, without saying it. At a private fundraiser in DC, a senior lobbyist was overheard saying, "She's not regulating, she's retaliating." Another quipped, "You give one woman too much digital runway access, and now she thinks she's the FAA." Laughter. Glasses clinked, smug nods. They didn't realize someone else at that table was recording. And by sunrise, that clip was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, CNN, even Facebook moms shared it. One woman with too much access? That's not concern. That's coded fear. The public wasn't just watching. They were choosing sides. And Selena? She didn't say a word. She let them talk. But her silence wasn't empty. It was strategy. Because while the critics scrambled to attack her in editorials, she quietly released the first flight ethics transparency report. A clean, easy-to-read data brief showing airlines that signed the charter saw a 43% drop in passenger complaints within 14 days. Minority and disabled passenger satisfaction scores increased by 51%. Crew de-escalation incident reports dropped 37%. CNN picked it up with the headline, "Flight Justice Works. First Report Silences Skeptics." But what truly cracked the backlash came from somewhere no one expected: the flight attendants themselves. A former veteran crew member named Lorraine Beckett, who'd worked 26 years across 5 airlines, posted a heartfelt video on YouTube. "I've seen what happens when people like me speak up," she said. "We get shut down, threatened, blacklisted. But now we've got a scorecard that protects us." Selena didn't just create a standard for passengers. She created a shield for crews who do the right thing. The video hit 3.4 million views in 2 days. Then came the veterans. A retired Air Force Colonel, James Lee, wrote an op-ed. "The treatment Selena faced wouldn't fly on any military aircraft I ever served. In the military, discrimination is a liability, not a policy." Other military leaders followed suit. By week's end, 17 retired officers signed an open letter supporting the charter, calling it the moral equivalent of the Geneva Convention for Modern Aviation. Then the dominoes fell. JetPath Alliance, a progressive airline tech group, added the charter to its board-level compliance framework. 2 Fortune 500 CEOs, including one from the finance sector, publicly praised Selena for doing what regulators refused to. Deltafly, one of Orion Skyfleet's fiercest competitors, quietly signed the charter and announced it would pilot the ethics system on 60% of its flights. Meanwhile, conservative media tried to fight back. They ran footage of Selena in boardrooms, giving keynote speeches, standing beside men in suits. One anchor said, "She's too polished, too careful. Maybe this isn't justice, maybe it's just power dressed up in policy." But for the average viewer, that was the wrong take. One elderly viewer from Arizona wrote into a station with a brutal clapback, "Since when is being prepared a bad thing? I'd rather trust someone polished with my life at 35,000 feet than someone sloppy with a pilot's license." The public wasn't buying the smear. Instead, they started buying flight justice merch, t-shirts, stickers, hats. All proceeds went to a travel equity fund Selena had quietly launched to support families previously removed from flights due to profiling. By the second week, #I Stand With Selena had over 2.1 million tags. One tweet summed it all up. "The same people mad at Selena Moore are the ones who think politeness fixes racism at 35,000 feet. Selena didn't gloat. She stayed the course. One night, as she walked into the Clearport server room, her lead systems engineer, Keshia, stopped her. "Ma'am, something happened with the charter site." "What?" "It just passed 1 million unique downloads." Selena blinked. She hadn't expected that. Later that night, she sat in her car, alone. No interviews, no cameras. Just her, the dashboard glow, and the hum of her own thoughts. She opened her old inbox, the one she hadn't checked in years. Buried beneath spam was a 7-year-old email from her mother, before she passed. "I know they'll try to erase you. Just make sure they have to erase a system." Selena exhaled, then whispered to herself, "Now they'll have to delete the sky." The video clip was just 22 seconds, but it was enough. A father, black, mid-30s, holding his 7-year-old daughter's hand, stood at the gate of Orion Skyfleet Flight 442, both holding first-class tickets. The gate agent glanced at their tickets, then shook her head. "You people keep trying this. Economy is that way," she said, without even scanning them. The father politely responded, "We paid for these seats." But before he could finish, 2 security guards stepped in. They escorted them away like criminals. The daughter clutched her teddy bear tighter. She didn't cry, but her silence screamed louder than any protest. The clip was posted by another passenger, an older white woman who had been standing in line behind them. "I saw it with my own eyes," she wrote. "This wasn't confusion. It was contempt." Within 2 hours, the video hit 3.1 million views. Within 4, it reached the Flight Justice Index. But by then, something else had already triggered. Inside Clearport Gateway's monitoring hub, a screen quietly flashed red. "Violation detected. Tier 1 discriminatory action. Flight 442, Orion Skyfleet." Ethics score dropped from 67-42. The Skyline route system had flagged the incident automatically using behavioral sentiment mapping and biometric bias detection. Features Selena's team had installed just weeks earlier. They weren't just relying on reports anymore. They were watching in real time. Selena was in her office when the alert came through. Her chief compliance officer, Marcus, walked in with his tablet. "You're going to want to see this." She took one look and closed her laptop. "Has the footage been verified?" "Yes. Multiple angles. Time-stamped. Internal audio picked up slurs too." Selena didn't blink. "Good. Initiate auto-sanction protocol." 3 clicks. That's all it took. Within 5 minutes, 3 airports removed Orion Skyfleet from priority landing schedules. 120 LLUMs in pre-cleared clearance credits were frozen. All routes under Skyline Route Network were flagged pending ethics review. The flight hadn't even taken off, but the damage had. By the next morning, Orion Skyfleet issued a statement. "We are reviewing the incident. It does not reflect our values." The public wasn't having it. One viral comment read, "You don't review racism, you remove it." Selena didn't say anything on camera. She didn't need to. The system spoke for her. Behind closed doors, Orion's board scrambled. An emergency call was scheduled with the FAA, but the FAA didn't budge. Their new response? If you signed the charter, you agreed to enforcement. The CEO of Orion slammed his fist on the table. She's making herself judge and jury. No, said the legal advisor. You signed her courtroom. Meanwhile, the father from the video, Darius Nolan, a software engineer from Atlanta, was tracked down by a news anchor. He declined interviews, but he allowed one quote to be printed. I wasn't angry for me. I've seen worse. I was angry because my daughter's first memory of first class was being told she doesn't belong. Selena saw the quote late at night and sat in silence. Then she opened a secure terminal and entered a new update. Charter Addendum 12.1. Minor Passenger Protection Clause. Any act of bias involving children under 14 will be classified as Tier 1 severe violation. Signed. Enforced. Effective immediately. By the end of the week, 5 more airlines signed the charter to avoid backlash. Orion Skyfleet's market value dropped 8.4%. Clearport Gateway became the first airport to offer real-time ethics tracking dashboards for passengers to see when choosing flights. Selena didn't gloat. She just walked to the observation deck, watched planes lift into the sky, and whispered, "Now they know. This sky has rules." At exactly 9:01 a.m., Selena clicked Publish, and the world changed. Flight Ethics Dashboard, Live Public Edition. View real-time compliance scores of all major airlines, filter by racial incidents, disability mistreatment, ageism, crew retaliation. Color-coded, green, compliant. Yellow, underwatch. Red, non-ethical. Within 15 minutes, the site received over 280,000 hits. Within an hour, that number had tripled. By noon, CNN, Forbes, and even Fox News were covering it. What Selena Moore just did, said one host, is the equivalent of taking every dirty airline file and putting it on a digital billboard in Times Square. And that wasn't even the biggest move of the day. Selena's team at Clearport had quietly launched a second system, an app. FlyFare. Free. Simple. Integrated into every major travel platform. Before booking a flight, a passenger could now see the airline's current ethics score. Time since last reported incident, ranking versus industry average crew de-escalation training stats, passenger treatment index by race, gender, and disability. And it had one big red flag. Warning. This airline has been flagged as a non-ethical carrier. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Orion Skyfleet, still reeling from the viral first-class incident, woke up to find their routes on 3 platforms labeled Avoid. Bookings dropped 27% in 36 hours. Summit Air, who had been reviewing their diversity training, was downgraded to red. A major bank canceled their $210 million aircraft lease line by noon. Astrojet, which had refused to sign the Flight Justice Charter citing corporate independence, found themselves kicked out of 3 hub airports by the end of the day. Meanwhile, public sentiment surged. One TikTok video showing how to use FlyFare racked up 11 million views in a weekend. A trending hashtag launched, #FlyFare or Don't Fly. The pressure spread beyond passengers. Insurance companies, airport vendors, and even staff unions began to use FlyFare compliance as a baseline. By day 3, the FAA had no choice but to respond. The deputy director held a press conference. We recognize the shift occurring in passenger trust and operational accountability. While the FAA is not a regulatory body for private ethics, we now require all partner airlines to submit quarterly ethics audits as a condition for continued federal route certification. Translation: sign the charter or lose your routes. A quiet wave of panic swept across airline boardrooms. 56 major and regional airlines logged into the charter portal in 48 hours. 12 signed. 9 requested clarification. The rest? They waited and watched the market punish their hesitation. On day 5, Selena received a call. Not from a journalist, not from a politician, but from the CEO of a major international booking site. "We want to integrate FlyFare directly. No opt-outs for airlines. If they want to be listed, they show their score. No exceptions." Selina nodded slowly and smiled. That same day, she met quietly with a small team at the Department of Transportation. They were reviewing her public dashboard and asking technical questions. One of them, a senior federal systems engineer, looked at her and said, "You know what you've done, right? You've created the FAA's ethics layer without needing the FAA." Selina said nothing. She didn't need to. In a quiet press statement released at 6:12 p.m. that night, 21 major U.S. airports, including LAX, JFK, and O'Hare, jointly announced, "Beginning next quarter, we will only grant peak time access and federal infrastructure incentives to carriers who are signatories of the Flight Justice Charter or demonstrate equivalent compliance under the Skyline Route framework." And just like that, Selina Moore's system was no longer just policy. It was infrastructure. Her assistant, Keshia, came in that night holding a bottle of tea. "You good?" Selina just stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office. The clear port lights below glowed steady, like a constellation of runways. "It's not over," Selina said quietly. Keshia chuckled. "Not even close. But they know now." Selina turned, face still calm. "No," she said. "Now they have to comply, and they have to show it." In the weeks to follow, FlyFare crossed 10 million downloads. Passenger behavior changed. People checked ethics scores like they checked weather. And more importantly, the airlines changed. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And in the quiet, commanding style Selina always led with. Justice didn't shout. It updated itself automatically. On the surface, everything looked calm. Airlines were adjusting. Passengers were cheering. The media kept calling it the Sky Reform. But underneath, a storm was brewing. It started with a quiet email chain. Subject: Charter resistance, internal discussion only. 6 airline CEOs, 3 legal counsels, 1 foreign investment advisor. They didn't name Selina directly, but they all knew who the target was. "This charter undermines our operational discretion. We are being extorted under the guise of ethics. We should consider legal action against Clearport Gateway and Skyline Route for overreach." They didn't realize Selina had already predicted this. 2 months earlier, during the early design phase of the charter rollout, Selina had insisted on embedding a feature in Skyline Route that raised eyebrows even in her own team: behavioral resistance detection, BRD. The idea? Track which airlines weren't just ignoring the charter, but actively trying to sabotage it. It wasn't illegal. After all, Skyline Route was a private access system. The airlines had signed user agreements. And the fine print? Consistent behavioral indicators of systemic non-compliance or internal resistance to ethics infrastructure may result in dynamic adjustment of trust scores. In short, you try to fight the system, you lose your access to the runway. By the second week of the resistance thread, Selina's dashboard began to light up. 3 airlines were flagged with elevated BRD scores. One had quietly diverted diversity training funds to legal contingency reserves. Another had submitted false ethics compliance logs to the FAA portal. A third was pushing talking points to lobbying groups, painting the charter as a politically motivated censorship campaign. Selina didn't respond. She didn't send warnings. She simply marked them. Risk tier upgraded, yellow, orange. Meanwhile, her internal Slack lit up with a code phrase. Flight 301 is preparing to taxi. Her staff knew what it meant, that Selina had greenlit a sequence no one could stop once it began. Across 6 major Skyline Route integrated airports, subtle shifts began. Reduced priority for landing slot approvals, delayed fuel routing clearances, suspended access to real-time weather routing assistance. It didn't affect all flights, just enough to cause costly delays. Pilots didn't know. Gate agents didn't know, but upper management did, and panic followed. One CEO demanded a call with Clearport. He was told Selina was in a strategy session. Another tried going through the FAA. They redirected him back to Skyline Route. It wasn't federal territory. It was Selina's system. Private, precise, untouchable. On a rainy Tuesday, Selina walked into the Clearport Control Center and looked at the BRD dashboard. 3 airlines now glowed red. Her chief systems officer, Amar, raised an eyebrow. They're digging in deep. Lobbyists, think tanks, even a few media plants. Selina simply replied, "Let them." She tapped a few commands. One more silent update triggered. Skyline Route, Trust Integrity Lock, V3.2 activated. Effect: if any of the flagged airlines attempted to override or dispute a charter clause in any regulatory form, their ethics score would auto-degrade by 12 points, dropping them into non-operational risk status. That meant no takeoff approvals from key European partners, no refueling cooperation in Asia-Pacific, no access to SkySecure International's insurance underwriting. In other words, they'd be grounded, without ever being officially banned. By Friday, one airline CEO, anonymous but clearly desperate, called a private meeting with Selina's general counsel. The quote, "Tell her we don't want war, but this feels like a silent coup." The lawyer smiled. Not a coup, a correction. Back in her private office, Selina watched the sky through the tinted glass. Flights came and went. Some carriers soared, others faltered. She didn't celebrate. She simply adjusted a line in her charter documentation. Resistance to transparency is the loudest admission of guilt. They thought they could wait her out. They thought it was just another wave, a trend, a PR scare. But by the end of the 3rd week, it became painfully clear to every executive, every federal official, and every airline regulator. This wasn't a trend. It was the new floor, and Selina Moore had built it under their feet. The final push came not from protest, but from pressure no airline could ignore. Insurance carriers began demanding Skyline Route scores and policy renewals. Credit underwriters flagged airlines not signed to the charter as high risk. And then came the knockout. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, announced that Skyline Route would be added as a recognized standard in their 2025 International Ethics Compliance Index. If your airline isn't verified under Skyline Route, said the ICAO ethics chair, you may face revocation of cross-border cooperation credentials. In simple terms, no ethics compliance, no international flying rights. And just like that, the holdouts folded. 37 airlines signed the charter in 72 hours. 8 more signed under conditional compliance. Even those who fought it hardest did so with silence and a shiver. They didn't get banners. They didn't get applause. They just avoided collapse. The FAA made their move too. Quiet, bureaucratic, but unmissable. A newly issued federal directive required all domestic U.S. airlines to report quarterly ethics reports, live Skyline Route integration logs, real-time passenger treatment escalations. Those failing to meet the minimum compliance threshold would lose priority access to federal infrastructure grants, airspace rerouting privileges, and TSA fast-track coordination. In other words, play fair or pay full price. Selina never gave a victory speech. She didn't go on CNN. She didn't tweet a word. What she did instead was simple. At 10 o'clock a.m., she logged into the Skyline Route console, updated the compliance index, and pressed Publish. A banner slid across the screen. Flight Justice Charter ratified, 91% industry adoption. Across the globe, digital billboards at major airports updated with new metrics. Ethics score, charter signatory status, passenger de-escalation rating live transparency tracker. People noticed. People used it. And for the first time in decades, passengers felt like the skies weren't just safe. They were fair. That afternoon, Selena packed her briefcase. No press conference, no entourage. She simply booked a flight. Seat 2A, clear port to DC. The airline? One of the last to sign the charter. She walked through the terminal like anyone else. Security greeted her by name, but she didn't stop. The gate agent nodded nervously, but Selena just smiled and scanned her ticket. No fanfare, no tension, just a quiet reminder of who now held the keys. Inside the plane, she settled into her seat. A flight attendant approached. Young, unsure. "Dr. Moore, Thank you." Selena nodded. "Do your job with dignity. That's all I ever wanted." As the plane lifted off, Selena looked out the window. Below her, runways crisscrossed like veins, an industry that had once ignored the voices of its most vulnerable, now ran on a system she'd built, not with outrage, but with order, not with revenge, but with rules, not with shouting, but with data. And somewhere, across 48 airports, 172 airlines, and millions of passengers, justice now traveled at 38,000 feet. 3 weeks later. The Grand Summit Hall at the International Aviation Ethics Forum, Geneva. Every seat taken, every major airline present, every regulator, every analyst, every voice that once tried to ignore her, now here, waiting. The screens around the room pulsed with data: skyline route compliance, passenger sentiment index, charter ratification timeline, ethics violations heat map, slowly fading into cool blues. And still, no opening speech, no announcement. The audience buzzed low, eyes flicking toward the stage. No one knew who would open, until a single door, near the back of the hall, clicked open, and silence fell. Selena Moore didn't enter through the VIP entrance. No escort, no press team, no media crew, just her. A navy blue coat, a soft gray scarf, flat shoes, eyes calm. She didn't walk fast, she didn't wave. But as she passed each row, people began to rise, row by row. Regulators, executives, pilots, technicians, even the ones who once lobbied against her charter. All of them rose, not out of obligation, but because they knew what she had done. Not by force, not by threats, but by building something they could no longer live without. She walked past the first row, nodded once to the front panel of moderators. Then she took a seat in the second row, far to the side. No placard, no spotlight, just a silent presence. And yet, not a single speaker began until they saw her sit. The moderator took the podium, cleared his throat, then paused. "I had a speech prepared," he said, voice catching. "But it feels a bit irrelevant now." A soft ripple of laughter, then quiet again. He looked down at his notes, then up again. Some reforms come from the top down, others from protest. But this, he nodded toward Selena's row, not daring to meet her eyes. This was precision, calm, relentless, ethical engineering. Then he stepped aside. No further introduction, just the screen lighting up with 3 words: passenger, dignity, protocol. The rest of the day moved with surprising ease. Panels reviewed integration best practices. Engineers showcased how Skyline route interfaced with old systems. A few skeptics raised hands. What about privacy? What about sovereignty? But even their tones were different now. Respectful, measured. One CEO even joked, "We used to fly with pride. Now we fly with accountability." Still getting used to that. Selena took no questions. She sat, listening, taking notes. Sometimes smiling, rarely speaking. But people kept glancing at her. Every slide, every policy revision, every commitment to passenger fairness. Somehow, it all pointed back to her, even when no one said her name. By late afternoon, a soft notification buzzed on her phone. A message from Amar. her systems laid. Ethics compliance just crossed 93% worldwide. ICAO added route ID to their global flight clearance list. It's done. She didn't smile. She just turned her screen off, placed the phone in her coat pocket. Then she stood. No signal, no interruption. She simply stood. And the room noticed. The Grand Summit Hall at the International Aviation Ethics Forum, Geneva. Every seat taken, every major airline present, every regulator, every analyst, every voice that once tried to ignore her. Now here, waiting. The screens around the room pulsed with data. Skyline route compliance, passenger sentiment index, charter ratification timeline, ethics violations heat map, slowly fading into cool blues, and still no opening speech, no announcement. The audience buzzed low, eyes flicking toward the stage. No one knew who would open, until a single door near the back of the hall clicked open, and silence fell. Selena Moore didn't enter through the VIP entrance. No escort, no press team, no media crew. Just her. A navy blue coat, a soft gray scarf, flat shoes, eyes calm. She didn't walk fast. She didn't wave. But as she passed each row, people began to rise, row by row. Regulators, executives, pilots, technicians, even the ones who once lobbied against her charter. All of them rose, not out of obligation, but because they knew what she had done. Not by force, not by threats, but by building something they could no longer live without. She walked past the first row, nodded once to the front panel of moderators. Then she took a seat. In the second row, far to the side. No placard, no spotlight. Just a silent presence. And yet, not a single speaker began until they saw her sit. The moderator took the podium, cleared his throat, then paused. I had to speak, every head turned. Some expected her to speak, but she didn't. She just nodded once, then walked out the same door she entered. No applause, but no one sat down until she was gone. Outside, the wind in Geneva was soft, cold, but not biting. Selena looked up. Above her, the low hum of a jet curved overhead, slicing through the clouds with perfect grace. She watched it go, not because it was impressive, but because it was working. Working better, working fairer. Because of her, she pulled her scarf tighter around her neck, headed down the marble steps toward the street. No one followed. No camera rolled. No headline was written in that moment. But a quiet truth lingered in the air behind her. The industry would never be the same, and she had never needed a microphone to make it happen. Back in D.C., a child boarded a plane with his mother and wasn't stared at. A veteran was greeted with a quiet, "Thank you for your service," not just by a flight attendant, but by a CEO boarding next to him. A teenager in a hoodie wasn't told to step aside for security reasons. A woman with an accent wasn't asked to repeat herself 3 times just to get water. The system was shifting. Not perfectly, not all at once, but enough, because one woman refused to let the skies stay silent. Some weeks later, a plaque was placed at the Clearport Gateway headquarters. The Selena Protocol. Not a law, not a protest, not a trend, a standard, a system, a legacy, ratified in silence, executed in full. You've seen how Dr. Selena Moore never raised her voice, yet changed an entire industry. What would you have done in her place? Tell us where you're watching from and drop a below. Do you think silence can be more powerful than a speech?